Hey ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. My name is KPZ. You're here on the home of the slightly above average ship review, continuing our introduction to destroyers, or the average player's guide to destroyering, talking about gunboating, because we haven't done any gunboating up until now. We've been doing all torping, torpedo boat, sneaky torpedo boat. Anyway, let's look here at the Clemson. 8 gun barrels, kind of a longer reload at 7 seconds, but it has 12 torpedoes. And so I wouldn't consider the Clemson to be a gunboat. I think the Farragut, the Tier 4 destroyer, is really the start of the archetype of American close-range gunboat destroyers. All right, so let's look at some other nation ships here. We will pick the Pan-Asian ship, the Shenyang. It's a Minakaze class, Japanese destroyer, so we know that is generally speaking going to be more of a torpedo boat. All right, Pan-European, we've got the Clash Horn. Reload really long. More of a torp spam destroyer in my opinion. So we get left with the Bourrasque and the Yitzhaslav, probably mispronouncing that. Looking here at the Bourrasque, I really recommend when you're starting out doing these gunboat destroyers. Normally I would say destroyers use the Type 1 temporary camo, but if you're going to be doing gunboating, you might want to use the Type 4 if you have enough of those available, because it also includes a dispersion of incoming fire. So we're going to switch to that for both of these destroyers. All right, so let's look at the Bourrasque. And oddly enough, since I recorded this video, I've switched the commanders to the other commanders. Good HE damage, good armor piercing damage. Torpedo damage is okay. 3 engine boosts with this build. And always got to put that common battle booster for speed on there. And we already talked about the camouflage. All right, let's look at this main battery. So you got 4 130 millimeter guns. It's pretty larger caliber at this tier. Longer reload. Torpedoes, like I said, they're good. They're not amazing. So here I recommend switching to Perceptive. I had this build up for a Kleber gameplay I was doing. So we're using Bay and Shichang. Subsurface Venture, it's going to nerf your reload a little bit. Go all out. Can't recommend this enough. No matter what nation it is, if you have a commander that can use Go All Out, I recommend using it. I think Russia has an event commander that can use it, and I recommend using it. Perceptive reduces the incoming damage, so you really want that. Also gives you that RDF indicator, kind of key for a gunboat. And destroyer be destroyed, you're building into your speed here. Give me speed. I would recommend Unstoppable instead at this lower tier. And I believe for the game that we're going to see at the end of this, I am using Unstoppable. But a boy knows the concealment commander. Your survivability commander, Louis Violette, will not have the penalty to the reload of your main guns. And so maybe that's a better choice. Your mileage may vary. Here we've got the survivability commander in the Itzislav, Anton Gurin. I did later get a Kraken in the Itzislav using Trubetskoy. I recommend Trubetskoy in the Itzislav. As you can see, Gurin and we've got Bay and Swirsky there, kind of an old school build. Quick fix, really important, reduce that splash damage. Look at me now. Perceptive. And a really nice skill in the 4th row. Sidestep reduces that, or increases the incoming fire dispersion, which is important for a gunboat. And of course, Unstoppable. So honestly, I'm not sure I would recommend either of these commanders for these ships at the current time, simply because the torpedo ratings are low enough to where I would use the other commanders in them. So I would use Trubetskoy in this ship. I would use Violette in the Bourrasque. All right, so you can see here the damage is not as good as the Bourrasque, especially the torpedo damage is not as good as the Bourrasque. You do have a smokescreen in addition to the engine boost, and yeah, maybe for a new player, the smoke generator will be helpful. Combat Battle Booster, the same camo and everything. Looking here at the stats, you have 5 gun barrels. That's usually your indicator, 5 or more gun barrels that you have a gunboat here. Just a 5-second reload compared to almost 7 seconds for the Bourrasque. 9 torpedoes, that's a lot of torpedoes. They don't do a ton of damage. And then you're okay, not tremendously fast. Concealment is 5. I think the Bourrasque was 5.1. So between these two ships, we are going to use the Bourrasque to do our gameplay here. Again, just want to harp on go all out. I cannot recommend this enough for a French destroyer. And so it's going to reduce it by 20%. So that might knock you down to 4 kilometers, I want to say, when that is active. Torpedo launchers, you can get more out of that with a Bueno. But that being said, I think we use a Bueno for our gameplay here in this video. Now, really quickly, before we get into the match, I do have some slides talking about these low-tier destroyers, stats, and stuff like that, all courtesy of WoW's Builds. If you haven't been by WoW's Builds, I recommend it. Tier 3 ships ranked by high explosive DPN. Number 1, Yetzislav. Number 2, Wakeful. Number 3, Bourrasque. Number 4, Clemson. I know you're shocked because when we looked at Clemson, it said 8, 4 turrets, 2 gun barrels in each turret. Why is that so low? Well, it's simple. It is so low because the calculations that are done in WoW's Builds don't take into account the layout of the turrets in the Clemson. Okay, so here's that example right there, 60 seconds divided by that 7-second reload, multiplied by 8 gun barrels, multiplied by the alpha strike of the HE shells. But because the Clemson has 2 wing turrets, you can only put 6 gun barrels on one target at one time. So the actual HE DPM is lower than the Bourrasque, and it's about 77,000. So here we're looking at the torpedo DPM. Same thing, 60 seconds divided by the torpedo reload, multiplied by the number of torpedo tubes, multiplied by the maximum torpedo damage. Clemson is number 1. Yetzislav is number 2. And down there at the bottom, number 8, is the Bourrasque. And so that's why I went with the Bourrasque, because you can do a lot of damage with the Yetzislav or the Clemson's torpedoes. But the Bourrasque reload is so long, it has only 6 torpedoes, so you're not going to be able to do that. That's why we chose it for this video. All right, real quick note about AA. Don't let the destroyer's AA give you away. If the max AA range is greater than your air detectability, enemy planes can see the AA tracers coming up from your ship and use it to locate you. And so consider turning your AA off if you are in a carrier match, if this is the case for your destroyer. All right, we're here in the Bourrasque. I really wish I knew the name of this map. Anyway, as a destroyer, a gunboat destroyer, what's your primary job? As T-Bull likes to talk about, you're the sheriff, you're playing the sheriff role. We're going to go into the closest cap, which is the Bravo cap. We're going to use our guns to dominate the cap. As you can see, the map is called Archipelago. We are top tier. And yes, there is an aircraft carrier in this match. I am not going to disable my AA simply because I just said whatever. I'm not going to disable my AA. But as you get higher tiers, strongly recommend considering that. At this match, I was just like, whatever. Tier 2s and 3s, we're top tier. We're going to go into this cap, and we're going to use the tools of the Bourrasque to dominate the Bravo cap and capture it for our team. All right, as you can see, the carrier planes are coming in there. It is always a consideration for your destroyer. I was playing some matches earlier this morning before I recorded this video, and I can't tell you I saw horrible, disgusting, extremely passive destroyer play. If you're in a gunboat destroyer, your job is not to hang out back at the spawn and throw up a smoke screen around the carrier. Your job is to go in here and do this. Use your guns to dominate the opponent. You can see we're punishing the Romulus here with our HE, and we're doing a big chunks of damage here whenever we hit him, keeping those gun barrels on target. He is trying to run away. It is not going to do him any good. And here in a minute, we are going to finish him off for our first kill. All right, Tenryu moving in here. We don't have a torpedo reload. We quickly switch our shell type to armor piercing. Against most cruisers, you want your shells to impact the center to the center rear of the ship. So you can see that first salvo didn't do a lot of damage. Second salvo right under those smokestacks. 3 hits to Citadel. Adjusting our aim as we disable his engine. 2 more hits to Citadel. And then this last salvo, another Citadel hit. And we finish him off. Alright, another destroyer coming in here in Izakazi. He's kind of caught on that ship there. We'll launch a torpedo at him, switch our shell type back to high explosive. He is turning in, and it's really going to play right into our hands. Alright, we'll hit him here with some really good splash damage. You know, you got to mix in your torpedo launches in a gunboat in between your reloads. And we use our torpedoes to finish off the Izakaze. Alright, so, I mean, look at that. Was that the Izakaze? Anyway, whatever destroyer it was, we killed it. We've killed the first 3 ships for our team. We have dominated the Bravo cap. We didn't capture it yet, but we dominated it. Alright, now the Danae is coming in here trying to get some. We're going to take over the smoke screen and use it to get some shots out at the Danae. Again, our aiming point, middle to middle rear of the ship. Another couple Citadel hits there. Using our torpedo indicator to get movement on that Wyoming. The smoke screen dissipates. And we're going to do a little bit of gunboating on the Danae. As you can see, not having the success that we were earlier. We will turn and use our torpedoes there. And then we will turn and bow back in order to mitigate damage. So when you're in a destroyer, you don't want to show that flat broadside, because that's more area for the enemy's HE shells to impact it. Now, I am giving a lot of broadside here, but that's because I'm punishing the Danae with my armor piercing. And we're going to run into the island, which is great for us. We finish off the Danae. A total of 15 Citadel hits on those cruisers, folks. If you are in a Russian or French destroyer gunboating at these lower tiers, do not hesitate to use your armor piercing. And remember that as you go up the gunboat line, you're going to have the opportunity to punish cruisers with your armor piercing. All right, here we got a G101. He is full health. We will use our torpedo launcher there and turn away. I'm just trying to create an angle here between myself and the G101. I'm going to turn back here in a second to see where he is at. I didn't want to engage him in a full-out gunfight because, as you can see, you lose a lot of hit points gunfighting. So at some point, even a gunboat is going to need their torpedoes to continue to do damage. We punish him, but we do not finish him off. Very disappointing, because that would have been a Kraken here in this match. He does get killed, and because our team dominated the enemy team, that ended this match. So I hope that's just a good idea, a little bit of what you can do in a gunboat destroyer. It is your job to go in and dominate the cap, especially when your enemy gunboats, the red team, are the red team's destroyers, are not gunboats. It is your job to hunt down those torpedo boats and kill them. That's what you are supposed to do. Here, we went into the Bravo Cap. We didn't even actually capture the Bravo Cap, but we totally dominated the Bravo Cap. And then at that point, the enemy team was on the run. We went after them and finished them off. And we ended up at the top of the board. Clearly the best ship on either team. The enemy team only got one kill. And so I think this was a great match for the Bourrasque, even though we were probably using Filippo Bueno. Whichever commander you choose, just remember these very introductory things that I've talked about. And I think you will find that the French destroyers and the Russian destroyers can be rewarding if you're cautiously aggressive and if you do your job, you're going to help your team. You'll probably have some growing pains. We all did. Don't let that dissuade you from trying out the French or the Russian ships. Anyway, I hope this helped you in some small way. If it did, hit that like button.